everybody, to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hill. Got Kipp Adams and Ben Wolk with me on this Tuesday afternoon. Recording a little bit later than we usually do on Tuesday, thanks to some player interviews we had over in Athens. But good opportunity to look ahead as Georgia gets ready for a huge road test at Auburn, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 6:30 Central, ABC Saturday night. We'll get into that in a little bit later on in the episode. We're going to start by wrapping up the Kentucky game. Ben and Kipp did such a good job on that post-game pod on Saturday. But final thoughts, things that stood out to us from that game. Then we'll get into Auburn and get a sense of where the Bulldogs are getting ready for their second road game of the 2025 season. But fellas, let's circle back to that 35-14 win for Georgia on Saturday, taking care of Kentucky. Let's just dive into what sort of stood with us and stuck with us from that win. The Bulldogs having an early kick, but not really having much of an issue. And I'll throw it to you, Kipp. What's still sort of on your mind from that Kentucky game, or even some stuff that you and Ben didn't cover in the post-game pod? Just what's on your mind from that game?
Well, they did what we thought they should do. They just gave Chauncey Bowens the start and let him go with it. I think that was, the brightest spot of this year's Georgia team, which again is still right on schedule for the most part. And we all knew how young they were going to be, but once football gets played, everyone's going to overreact every week. But I think the brightest part of this team has just been the run game and run. I mean, the front of that is Chauncey Bowens, the guy that if I count all three, everyone on the pod right now, I have exactly zero of us that were talking about Chauncey Bowens being the most likely player to lead Georgia in rushing this season. But I think he's poised to be that guy. And that just kind of reminds you that, that's why you have the entire offseason. You put in the work, you grind these guys, compete, and you might not be the starter in week 1 or even week 2 or 3, but you keep going out there and practicing hard and preparing yourself, knowing that any game could be, your name called. And I think that's the way Chauncey Bowens has approached his time at Georgia, and it's paid off. He's a guy that I guess if I were trying to compare him, I would say he's, gear 1 only DeAndre Swift, where he just he doesn't have the second gear. He's probably not going to run a 4.48 at the combine if he gets that opportunity. But first gear, he's got that where he just has the balance, the vision, the outstanding control, and can break tackles with that lower body strength that he has. And so now we're talking about him as, one of the top 10 backs in the SEC and a guy that Georgia needs to make sure they continue feeding the ball moving forward, because now you've got the run game that you lacked last season. You got what you've been looking for in that part of the team. So just continue to build on that strength and feature it week to week. And, feed them.
Yeah, Chauncey has been a bright spot. It was really neat on Monday. We had a chance to talk to him for the first time. Got a clip we'll hear from him later on that I think will age all three of us with what he was saying about some former Georgia running backs. But no, that was definitely a bright spot. Going back to my rewatch story, watching through the game, thought the offensive line played really well, especially given the circumstances. Losing Monroe Freeling about 5 minutes into that game. I think you should feel pretty good about where they are given the circumstances, given how beat up they have been, and given what they did along the way. I think Kipp noted it in the post-game pod that Drew Bobo at times had his hands full. Kentucky's nose tackles, man, they were getting after it. I know Juan Gaston had a few tough reps, but on the whole, line played well, and I think you should feel pretty good. We're waiting to get a better sense of where Monroe Freeling is going into the Auburn game, but I thought they played well. Good sign to see at least the tight ends get a little bit more action in the passing game. Oscar Delp, I don't think I quite knew that Oscar Delp had that gear that he hit when he got up to, picked up about 36 yards on a big completion. Thought Gunner played pretty well. His pick was pretty ugly. Watching it back, I mean, just kind of stared down London Humphreys, which I thought it was kind of odd because I thought really over the course of that game, you saw more of him being comfortable in the pocket. You saw more of him very noticeably going through his progressions. I know at one point, I think it was Jesse Palmer pointed out him going through the progressions on a third of Dylan Bell, where Dylan's like the third or fourth option on that play. But I know Gunner's numbers as far as passing weren't huge, but thought he did a really good job. I think he has continued to make good decisions as far as when he bails out of the pocket. I don't think. I kind of think early in this season you saw times where he was a little trigger happy of I got to get out of here when he had more time. I think that's only natural, for a young quarterback, especially like that Marshall game, first start at home, those kind of pregame jitters going into a new season. Elsewhere, thought it was good to see some of the younger guys, C.J. Wiley, Landon Rolden, Bo Walker late in that game, Ryan Puglisi, who was ripping it and then had a pretty ugly interception. But I mean, you need those guys to get those opportunities to go throw them out there and have a chance to go out there and make some plays. So I throw it to you, Ben. What else has stood with you from this Kentucky game? What's still on your mind from a 35-14, pretty comfortable win for Georgia?
Well, to me, everything that I'm going to take away from that game, if I'm going to take anything away from that game, is going to be primarily on the defensive side of the ball. And what I find interesting about this Georgia defense is it's really stopping the run at an impressive rate this year. I mean, it's a very reliable, successful run defense so far this season, consistently against everybody that it's played. Yet we've now seen, the 4-play 75-yard drive against Kentucky, I think, is the one that will concern folks the most, because they hit, I want to say, like a 36-yarder followed by a 29-yarder. It's a combination of eye control and communication issues and just completely busted assignments. And it's not what we traditionally see from this Georgia defense. I don't even think that it's something we should expect to see. I just know that when you compound what happened against Tennessee with seeing some of that against Kentucky, that's going to further concern folks. I think that it's interesting when you put those two pieces of the Georgia defense against one another, because I do think Georgia is going to be finding itself in a lot of 3rd and 7 situations defensively because of how strong the run defense is. And I think any year before this year, if Georgia found itself in that situation more often than not, you'd be feeling pretty good about Georgia getting off the field on 3rd down. Is that what you can expect this season? I don't know. I think that there's still a lot of hangover from the Alabama game that is going to stick with people until Georgia stops a team on 3rd down that it feels is a consistently reliable offense. And so I don't know, but I think that what I do know is that this Georgia run defense is a reliable Georgia run defense. And I don't know that you could necessarily say that about the run game on either side of the ball a year ago, and you can. I mean, we talked a lot in the offseason about stop the run the ball. Well, this Georgia team does that. It's just other issues that have popped up that are now giving you cause concern about the 2025 version of it.
Yeah, that's a good point that you brought up. And what I was going to say, coming off of the Alabama game, Kirby talked about how much he learned about the team. And when he was asked specifically, what have you learned? He said, we can run the ball and we can stop the run, which is a sign in the right direction. The only other thing I wanted to throw in for that Kentucky game was there's still kind of some mishaps in the secondary. There were a couple of plays, and that was Kentucky's second drive, where Kentucky's motion caught Georgia off guard. I mean, they had a screen that went for, I think, about 35, where they motion a guy out to the left, and Georgia just doesn't have the numbers. It's not a matter of, a guy, didn't make a play or got blocked. Like, it's 3-on-2, and that's as easy as it gets. I mean, they hit the screen, and he takes off. And then the touchdown pass they had early in the second quarter, I think that was a tight end, went in motion, and at the snap, for whatever reason, Janelle Aguero just doesn't pick him up, and he's running across the middle wide open. So it's those things that you have to imagine. Hugh Freeze and the Auburn coaching staff, they had a bye week last week. I'm sure that they noticed there's been some, communication issues. There's been some eye discipline, which I think was part of the conversation after the Tennessee game and after the Alabama game. So that's sort of the area of concern still for me. Still looking at, for me, the defensive line is still my biggest concern with the lack of pass rush and and what that will mean in some of these big games. But two, secondary cannot have those kind of miscues, and you certainly can't have them Saturday night when Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton, those receivers they have will have the ability to make big plays. So I'll throw it to you, Ben. Anything else from Kentucky? I thought you guys did a good job wrapping that up. And again, like kind of my last word on it is this was a noon game, and Georgia was a big favorite, and they didn't play with their food. They won a game, and it was never really in doubt. Anything else you want to add?
Georgia took care of business. It's pretty similar to what we said. Like, I don't think you can take many things away from this game. Like, Georgia did what it was supposed to do. Kentucky's probably the worst team in the SEC this year. It wasn't anything that'll, knock your socks off what Georgia did, but it was just take care of business, get on to Auburn. I mean, I think probably the biggest takeaway is that Georgia would have preferred to get out of there healthier than it did after losing Monroe Freeling.
Yep. Anything else from the Kentucky win?
As been said, there are a lot of teams that, we're going to talk about that did not take care of business last weekend. So I think in this landscape of college football, it's okay to have taken care of business being your goal on a week-to-week basis. It's just your rosters are different. Like these teams, it's as close to parity, I think, as you're going to get, especially in the SEC right now, when teams can just make sure they win a recruitment or two or a transfer portal guy or two that Georgia or an Alabama or an Ohio State wanted. That brings the margins down a little bit. So I think we talked about the noon kickoff. I mean, they did not come out and start sluggish, regardless of whether you take photos of the crowd 15 minutes before kickoff or 10 minutes. I think they went out there and they were focused. And that needs to be said because it's going to be brought up. If Georgia comes out and plays sloppy, it's like, oh boy, Kirby's lost the culture in this locker room. They haven't. They have not done that yet. So I think, you should praise them when they're doing what you're hoping they can do. And as you said, I mean, like the injuries have caused them to grow up a lot quicker than maybe anyone thought. But there are a lot of young guys that are starting to play pretty good football, like DeMello Jones out there. People were wanting Justin Williams to get more snaps in the most loaded linebacker room in the country. So, it's just because you came close to not covering a spread. I just think that there are some pauses you can take, and you should still enjoy an SEC win anytime you can get one.
Glad Kipp mentioned the crowd. Shout out to my guy Bobby. I hope you're listening to this podcast. All right, one of the nice things when Georgia has a later kick is we can kind of check in on the rest of college football, the rest of the SEC. Didn't have that opportunity on Saturday because Georgia got done so early. Some of those games were just getting started. And I want to start here in the SEC. A lot of the SEC teams actually had bye weeks last week, but wanted to run through some of the scores. Alabama beating Vanderbilt 30-14. Florida beating Texas 29-21. Oklahoma takes care of Kent State 44-0. Texas A&M beats Mississippi State 31-9. But guys, let's start with Florida. 29-21. I mean, that was the conversation, the game to talk about. And frankly, I think the reason that we were in such a hurry to get out of the press box, have a chance to watch at least that second half. So, Ben, what do you make of Florida, Texas? Is Texas a fraud, or were we too quick to write off Florida?
I think it's a complicated game. That game is going to be it's going to be great for people that want to make hot takes. It's also like Texas played the exact game you cannot play against Florida, which is falling down multiple scores early, because that defense will suffocate you. I mean, that pass rush is really good. They're going to stop the run. I think it's going to be one of the better defensive tests that Georgia's going to get all season on its schedule. And so you do not want to fall down 10-0 earlier, 17-7 earlier. I can't remember exactly at what points it was a 10-point game, but when you're playing from behind that continuously throughout the course of a game, you got to have a quarterback that you're comfortable dropping back and throwing it 45 times. And Arch Manning is just not that quarterback right now. I'm not going to jump to any huge conclusions on Arch Manning. I think Arch Manning has had the season that anybody who watched him play a couple series in the Georgia game last year would have thought that he was going to have his first time as a full-time starter. I think there's reasons why he was not starting over Quinn Ewers. I know that everyone is always quick to leap to backup quarterback needs to be the starting quarterback because the starting quarterback's not doing exactly what everybody wants to be doing all the time. But there were reasons why it took Arch Manning the amount of time that it took to get there. I still think, like, I would buy Arch Manning stock right now because I think that it's really low, and I think that there's just this impression that he's not going to be able to get any better as a quarterback, which I don't necessarily believe in. There are still flashes with Arch Manning that make you say, okay, there's been too many mistakes, and if you're the type of quarterback that he's been this year from a passing standpoint, you can't make the number of mistakes and turn the ball over the way that he has. That Florida team is going to make a lot of quarterbacks look silly at certain points. I mean, Carson Beck has had a great season so far at Miami. He looked pretty pedestrian against Florida. There were other circumstances that played into that as well. But I think Florida is going to make a lot of teams. And quite frankly, they made Garrett Nussmeier look like that. Even in their loss to South Florida, they made the opposing offense basically not have any success whatsoever. Like, other than Miami at times in that first half, nobody's really consistently moved the ball on this Florida team. So I think that it has more to do with that probably than anything about Texas. But Texas is clearly not the football team that people were claiming them to be when they came into the season ranked number 1. And I think that goes without saying. I thought Texas was going to be better than they were, but once we saw what they did against Ohio State, I think seeing them put up a performance like this against a Florida, or quite frankly, any SEC team with a close to elite defense is going to be able to give Texas a game right now.
Yeah, I mean, the Arch Manning part of it, I had this conversation, I can't remember who I was talking to coming out of the Florida game, and it was like, it felt like there were a few throws, a possession where you were like, okay, I kind of, this is what we expected from Arch Manning. And then he would just make a decision that you're just like, you cannot do that. And I joked late in that game, when he got knocked out of the game for a play, they put in Matthew Caldwell, who just, throwing this out here, I covered Matthew Caldwell in high school. He played at Auburn High. And I was like, just leave him in. Just let him go. And then he went out there, man, and he was ripping it. And then they put Arch Manning back in there. And if I'm not mistaken, he immediately threw an interception that just ended it. So if you made me choose between the two, I think it's not so much Texas as a fraud, but that this Florida team is still dangerous. And it's the fact that game was in Gainesville. I mean, I've talked about it a lot getting ready for this Georgia-Auburn game and just looking at the entire SEC, which we'll do in a few minutes too. But it's really hard to look at a lot of the games week to week and just say, like, oh, there's no way that Georgia could lose to this team, or there's just no shot that they're going to lose to whoever. Those opportunities of just riding in permanent marker W's, they're just not as common as they used to be. And that's what I sort of look at as that Florida game. And with how they played, Jaden Ball running hard, DJ Lagway making play, Dallas Wilson, they had no answer for him. You guys both picked Florida before the season to beat Georgia. And there's a lot of stuff that Florida did in that Texas game that you can see that this Florida team is capable of beating Georgia. But again, Texas has got stuff to figure out, but I give more credit to Florida more than anything. Kipp, what were your thoughts on the way that one played out and really what it means for both teams?
This is all Paul Feinbaum's fault. We all offseason, it was just, you couldn't go anywhere without hearing about Arch Manning, and it's not Arch's fault. There was nothing he could do about it. It's been happening since he was, beating up on middle school looking kids in high school to put out the film that he did. But it's the expectations for first year starting quarterbacks is just beyond ridiculous. And I think you can look at Texas. When Quinn Ewers was the first year starter, he had a horrible first year too. And then he led them to back-to-back Final Fours. I think he's not even the first or second quarterback to be a late bloomer for Sarkisian. You look at Mac Jones being a late bloomer. It is the fact that he was not prepared for this. His offensive line has done him no favors either. So in practice and in games, his clock is sped up, and they don't have a run game either. So I just think that the part of Texas season being a disappointment is they were set up for disappointment the entire year. The other side of it is, I mean, not enough people are talking about the fact that the Texas defense, which I thought was going to be really solid, allowed 7 yards of play to Florida. This is a Florida offense that was ranked well outside the top 100 in that department. They were like 120th in yards per play. So that's really the disappointment in that game. And the scary part about this game is this is the time of the year where it always happens, where we think Billy Napier's just dead, DOA. And somehow he gets another opportunity to keep this job. And I think that's where we're at right now, to where Dallas Wilson is balling out. DJ's now looking like, a solid SEC quarterback again. And you're getting good production from Jaden Boss. So the offense looks solid. But Florida's still 2-3. They still have to play Texas A&M next week, or they got Ole Miss and they got Georgia. So I think he's bought himself a week, but I just think we have to remember that this season is going to be very tough for Florida to come out anything but still another. I mean, I don't know. Is 7-5 possible? I'm not really sure, but I think that's where the question is. He's in that realm where people aren't talking about him being on the hot seat because of other performances right now. And I think we just need to remember that that team is talented enough to still perform like they did against Texas on a weekly basis, and they should.
To Kip's point, that was part of why that loss to South Florida was so damning, because it was like, buddy, where are you finding the other wins that you got to have? So I think that's a good point to make. And Fox Mulder on YouTube says Arch and Raiola going elsewhere to Georgia, a huge favor. I don't know about that, but there was part of that conversation on Saturday night after the Arch Manning performance where folks were talking about what it would look like at Georgia. And I just said, for my sake and really my liver's sake, really happy that Arch is not at Georgia playing this way, because, guys, the Junkyard would just be, I mean, I'd be afraid to log in every day to go to work. That's what I'd tell you guys. Any other thoughts on the other SEC games? A&M takes care of Mississippi State at home. Vanderbilt made things interesting early, and then Alabama takes advantage of some Vanderbilt turnovers. Ben, any thoughts from the rest of the SEC?
I mean, A&M is an interesting one. Them hosting Florida this week, I think we'll learn a little bit more about A&M. Though them being at home, we probably don't learn all the way about A&M. But I think that they're an interesting one. I've had this conversation, and I hate to be doing the playoff talk stuff right now, but I think it's interesting when you forecast the rest of the SEC slate for all of these SEC teams, and you look at what Georgia has to be able to do. It's interesting. I don't know that 10-2 gets you in to the playoff, and it's not because I don't think 10-2 makes you one of the 12 best teams. I think just there's a lot of SEC teams that could end up going 10-2, and if you've lost to the wrong teams during your run, then your 10-2 won't be viewed as favorably as some others. And so Texas A&M is one of those teams I think could make things complicated. Oklahoma is one of those teams that I think can certainly make things complicated. Missouri is obviously one of those teams that can make things complicated. I mean, even technically a program like Vanderbilt could still make things complicated with their loss to Alabama. Technically their resume is not a whole lot different than Georgia's right now. So, it's interesting. And all that to say, it's I think we're seeing, even before we get to the 9-game schedule, the week-to-week impact that the SEC slate is going to have on the playoff.
Kip, any thoughts just from the past week with the SEC besides the Florida-Texas game we talked about?
Yeah, I think the Texas A&M team, I think you have to kind of think they might be for real. That they won at Notre Dame. Mississippi State, we thought looked a lot better. It kind of changed how we might be approaching Georgia going there to play later this season. They didn't score a touchdown until what? It was halfway through the fourth quarter before they scored a touchdown. So I think you're getting good play from Reuben Owens at running back. Like I said, with Florida, I mean, Kyle Field's going to be doing Kyle Field things whenever. I wouldn't know what it's like there, but I mean, like, again, it's going to be an experience for Florida that they'll get to experience. So I think that's an impressive team, and I did watch them against Auburn, and I think both of those games they only allowed like 1 third down conversion on defense. So we've talked about third down defense a lot with Georgia this season. The last 2 SEC wins for Texas A&M. I mean, that's an incredible stat, and it shows you that, they might be for real. It's going to be tough for them to go through the whole slate because we know how tough that is. But I think they've stacked enough performances to where you just have to look at them and go, okay, this is a team that could be playing. This could be a playoff team as we approach the halfway point of the season.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with what they've done, and I do think I've kind of sold them short a little bit when we do the SEC poll. I need to respect the Aggies just a little bit more than I have. A couple of scores from around the country that I figure we would want to get to. UCLA beating Penn State 42-37. Penn State was a humongous favorite in that game, wound up losing second straight loss after losing in overtime to Oregon. Miami goes up 28-3, the most cursed score in college football. Holds on, but Florida State made it interesting, 28-22. Thoughts on either of those games or anything else that we haven't hit in Week 6? I'll throw it to you, Ben. Thoughts on either of those games or really the field from last week?
Well, the Miami-Florida State game was interesting because Miami, for the better part of it, looked like they were just going to dominate the entire thing from start to finish, like it sort of felt like they have for most of their games this season. Carson Beck looked great. Malachi Toney is probably going to go down as the best reclassified skill player that there ever was. Like, he's supposed to be a senior in high school, and I know that we're talking about Ryan Williams, right? Like, that we're a year off of that. The explosiveness that Malachi Toney has and just how easy he makes everything look. I think that Carson Beck is in heaven right now, given some of the experiences that he dealt with last season. I think that he looks really, really good. Ruben Bain looks really, really good. I mean, I think that I am a believer in Ohio State is the best team in the country until someone proves otherwise, but it's hard to bet against Miami right now. I'll say they're a good looking team. It is interesting. Florida State should have recovered an onside kick that they didn't as well. We're not that far away from having a way different conversation about Miami, but most of the damage that opposing teams have done against Miami this year, at least the opposing offenses, have come in the fourth quarter when Miami has built pretty comfortable leads. So I don't even know right now if there's a real recipe for how to score on this Miami defense when they really need to get stops.
Yeah, I mean, I think this Miami team is legit, and I'll get your thoughts on this, Kip, but I think Georgia fans need to brace for Carson Beck Heisman race, at least being a candidate, just with the weapons around him and how he's utilized them. I mean, do you see the same thing, Kip? What do you think of Carson's chances to be a part of that race?
I don't know why anyone's surprised. Like, he was always set up for success with this move. And I think, he's got playmakers that are continuing to shine. No Georgia fan, can honestly say that Carson Beck's playmakers did him justice last season, regardless of throws that were off, his deep ball accuracy, whatever. We all know that he dealt with the worst performance from Georgia pass catchers that you hope you'll ever see in your lifetime. So now he's got guys making plays, and I think he's benefiting from it. You're seeing 2023 Carson Beck again. So overall, I think you can't be surprised at all in what he's bringing to the table.
Any thoughts on that Miami, Florida State, Penn State losing as a 24.5-point favorite, or just anything else from last week?
No surprise at all. We know.
Penn State losing to UCLA, who hadn't led
They went across the country.
That had nothing to do with Penn State. UCLA was the worst Power 4 team I had ever seen up until Saturday.
I mean, I think you make that coaching change. Sometimes a coaching change can fire up your team. They have something to play for. You got Penn State already having that disappointing loss that you already knew they were going to have. But at the same time, I'm just going to say it. Like, I know Nittany Lions fans already got the hot board out, but like, this is who you have in James Franklin. But with the playoffs probably expanding, you're going to be in the mix every year. You just have to be really careful. There's a lot of programs out there that are ready to get rid of their coach. And the chances are, I think, that if you get rid of James Franklin, you're going to take a step back. Like, the chances are greater you're going to take a step back than you're going to get into the top like 5 or 6 programs in the country. It's just too hard to go from top 20 to top 6. And that's the jump you're asking him to make. He hasn't shown he can make it, but you can take a step back. You could become like just a team that misses the college football playoff like every other year. And then you'll be wondering, why did we do this? There are a lot of programs that are going through that right now. And a lot of programs that are looking at the same decision. And I think North Carolina is a program that made a coaching hire, like made a change. And how are they looking right now? And who predicted that Bill Belichick would be a complete dumpster fire in Chapel Hill? I think all of us did.
Not me. I was wrong on that one.
Oh, my goodness. It's exactly what we thought it would be. I mean, they canceled the Hulu documentary. I want that footage. Like, I want that tape. Like, if Netflix or somebody or Prime can just buy the rights to that, like whatever NIL UNC needs, I want that footage to leak somehow, because it's got to be amazing, because that is a program where you look at it and you go, I'd rather not be that program right now.
We need someone to make a documentary about the making of the documentary for the North Carolina thing. And I did want to tie this back to Georgia. And Ben, I want to see if you feel this way. The James Franklin conversation, one, I don't think he's really in trouble. But two, I swear, James Franklin right now, to me, feels like Mark Richt in the 2010s, where it's like the fan base is tired of him, but it's a huge gamble to try to make a move.
I 100% agree that I think that James Franklin is Penn State's Mark Richt. And I think that, and for the good and the bad, I'll say, like, I think that there's a lot to like about having your program built the way that James Franklin builds the program. They have a good team year in and year out. They're in such a complicated spot, especially in the 12-team era, because this UCLA game isn't a typical James Franklin loss. Like, normally they beat the teams they're supposed to beat, and then they lose to all the teams that have equal to or elite talent above them. And that, like, they're almost the perfect college football litmus test of how good of a football team are you. If you can beat Penn State, you're a pretty good team. If you're not beating Penn State, then you're not a very good team. Like, they're kind of right on that boundary. This year's that's not the case. I mean, I think they're going to be hard pressed to make the playoffs this season with a loss to a team that might. Everyone was talking about UCLA potentially going 0-12 leading up to this week. So there's a chance they just lost to a 1-12 team. I think that Nico proved that he's still got something in him there. It's like they could maybe win a few where they're not supposed to. And probably the stupidest, not to get on a tangent, but the stupidest part of the whole Big Ten scheduling stuff to me is just how ridiculous the travel is of it. And, like, of course, a team that's flying from Pennsylvania to LA is going to play like shit. Like, of course that's going to happen. Pardon my language. Sorry. I just realized we were on air for a second, but of course you're going to play bad when you go and make that travel. Like, you look at the records against the spread of teams that are traveling multiple time zones in these Big Ten games. And it's like, nobody's playing well when they're going multiple time zones on the road in these games. It's like, of course, that's why college football has had regionality through all of these years. But that was an unnecessary tangent that also got me more unfiltered than I cared to be. So
whose fan base should be happier, a 9-3 Penn State team or a potential 3-9 UCLA team?
I think it's UCLA, because everybody thought this was the year, which I'm going to go and say I did not. There was a lot of – the team I was wrong about this year was Clemson. But Penn State, I was like, I ain't touching that. When we did the Oregon-Penn State game, I said I do not trust James Franklin. So, yeah, I think a 3-win UCLA fan base would need – between the two would be happier. And what I want I want New Mexico to really lean into the well, we beat UCLA,
Big Ten
who
champs.
beat the carryover there.
Transitive property.
That was the big word I was looking for. The transitive win over Penn State. That's something worth putting up at least on social media. All right, we're going to take a quick break, come back, and talk about this week's game, another edition of the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Share what Kirby Smart and players had to say, and give some early thoughts on what should be an exciting Saturday night in Jordan-Hare. Guys, Georgia Auburn Saturday night, mentioned earlier, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 Central on ABC. Thursday afternoon, I'll have on Auburn Undercover's Nathan King to help us preview this game, but did want to share some of what Kirby Smart and players had to say to start this week, getting ready for another edition of a huge rivalry for Georgia. And wanted to start out with Kirby talking about playing on the road. Obviously, Jordan-Hare, one of the toughest places to play in the SEC. But Georgia does have the benefit. They've already gone to Neyland Stadium this year. They survived a real road test at Tennessee. Kirby was asked about how valuable that experience can be, particularly for the younger guys, and what makes Jordan-Hare Stadium such a hard place to play.
Well, it's not necessarily hard. I mean, it's not what makes it hard at Jordan-Hare. It's what makes it hard anytime you go on the road, right? It's an intense, crazy environment. The night games are more so than the day games in terms of that atmosphere that's created. But we practice in that. Like we create an environment of chaos and noise and try to create confusion and do things so that we have to communicate in that. So our guys get to practice in it. We'll have to go out and execute. I don't know what increases from game one to game two on the road more. I think you got a lot of freshmen that now may not have as much anxiety because they've done it once. There's certainly more anxiety the first time you do it, but it's not like that goes away. You have to be confident and know your plan and execute your plan.
Kipp, how much different would you feel about this game for Georgia if it was their first road game, that they were this far into the season, and given everything else that's happened with injuries and young guys having to step up, if they hadn't already had that experience in Neyland Stadium?
Well, I wonder if if Gunnar Stockton doesn't throw that first pick last week, I'd feel really nervous. I think that him just being more confident to take chances on throws, knowing that this environment's probably going to put him in a situation where he's out of his comfort zone and he has to push himself out of that zone and make decisions to get rid of the football. I would feel very nervous if he hadn't already been in an environment comparable to Jordan-Hare, knowing that this, at night, this kind of game just puts – we know, all of us know the craziest things that have happened there. I think that it still kind of is a first road game for the offensive tackles. So all those snaps are going to be even more important that they've already had seen these younger guys go. But knowing that is my number one matchup and probably everyone's in this game, I think that's where being in that environment, they're going to be tested and stressed. So at least you have, again, a Drew Bobo and a Gunnar Stockton who are going to be leaned upon to make sure those guys are well prepared and in positions to succeed when they're having to make silent calls or make checks at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for Drew Bobo, an Auburn high grad. I'm sure that'll be neat getting to go back home. And mentioned too, Bo Hughley, the left tackle. Auburn tried everything it could to get him to flip when he was a recruit. He would be playing if Monroe Freeling is not able to go. Should have mentioned that earlier, talking about some of the injuries. Kirby said that it's an ankle for Monroe, but it's not as bad as they thought. I think based on where we are Tuesday afternoon, I think that Monroe will be able to go. But long week, got to see how he reacts to it, and that's a huge question mark going into that game. Kipp alluded to this, Ben, but you and I both have seen a little bit of the Jordan Hare voodoo over the years. I mean, just from your experience, how difficult is this environment, and how seriously should Georgia take the fact not only that they're on the road, but it's a night game in Jordan Hare?
Yeah, I've certainly seen my fair share of Georgia or Auburn voodoo in general, but Georgia Auburn voodoo specifically. Am I not mistaken? The last Auburn night game against Georgia was that 2017 game, 40-17. Is that the last time Georgia's gone to Jordan Hare and played at night?
I do not recall.
I think it is. I was covering Auburn at the time. That was the Gus Malzahn whip the dog crap out of them game that Auburn, Kerryon Johnson kind of just took over that game from start to finish. Those are the types of games where if similar to what I was talking about with Florida, and I think it's funny because I think Texas and Auburn and Florida all have a lot of similarities to one another right now in terms of defenses that you really got to worry about, defenses that can make you pay, defenses that if you find a way to fall behind early, it doesn't matter that people think they're not that good or whatever. It's like once they're up 10-0 on you, it doesn't matter how good people think that they are. If they have the ability to take advantage of having an early 10-point lead against you, I think Auburn's one of those defenses that can certainly do that. So it's a scary environment to go in knowing how quickly things can unravel. I think that Georgia has an identity that seems to be able to overcome that better than most other teams do, not just in road environments, but just in adverse situations during football games. So I think that Georgia will be fine on that front. The bigger issue to me with Auburn has less to do with it being Auburn or a night game or the voodoo of Jordan Hare or whatever, and just that this Auburn team is better in some spots than I think people think, and that if you don't play well early, which we say all the time, but if you don't play well early, there's certain defenses that can make it really, really painful for you to find a way to scratch and claw your way back into it. And I think that this Auburn defense is one of those.
Yeah, I mean, the defense has been a bright spot. Auburn right now 3-2, 24-17 loss at Oklahoma, 16-10 loss at Texas A&M. They're coming off a bye week. Kirby was asked about that, and Kirby basically said there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, it just is what it is. That they're coming off a bye week while Georgia played Kentucky last week, and Kirby put a lot on the offensive struggles to the fact that they had to go to Norman, that they had to go to College Station, that playing on the road, he really felt like that attributed to some of the offensive issues that have Auburn fans up in arms and hoping for a different result on Saturday night. Big part of the conversation with Auburn, as you could imagine, Jackson Arnold, the quarterback, what he brings to the table, what he's capable of doing. This is what Kirby had to say about the Auburn quarterback.
Thing is his athleticism. He's had 2 or 3 plays that were broken plays or plays that maybe scramble plays, RPOs that were designed to be thrown, that maybe the look changed, and he takes off running and he runs for 60 yards, he runs for 70 yards. He doesn't just run for like 8-9 yards and go down. I mean, he runs like a running back. He runs over you, through you, around you, speed. They run gap schemes with him. They run perimeter runs with him. And then probably the toughest thing to defend is when he drops back and he ends up taking off running. So he's a weapon, and they've got weapons around him in terms of the ability to throw the ball downfield.
When I think about this game, guys, the thing that has kind of stuck to the front of my mind is when traditionally we've looked at Georgia in games that they've struggled, it's the athletic quarterbacks. It's the guys that can make plays that, even if it's scrambling downfield or just moving to extend plays, those are the guys that sometimes give Georgia issues. And I think about 2 years ago, as much as Peyton Thorne struggled for Auburn, early in that game at Auburn, he breaks off like a 60-yard run or something, and all of a sudden Auburn's got the momentum, and they build a lead that Georgia has to work its way back from. But Kipp, what do you think about the challenge of trying to slow down Jackson Arnold? And again, the fact that he is that dual threat that can extend plays and has guys that, if he gets a little bit extra time, he's able to make plays downfield.
I think it's a saving grace for Georgia that Auburn's offensive line and Jackson Arnold in general have performed pretty comparably to Kentucky as far as their ability to actually push the ball downfield. And they're terrible on third down as well. And I think, again, this is a situation where you mentioned it before, like the Kentucky game was kind of still a get-right game for Kentucky's passing attack. This is going to be a get-right game for someone. Like it's either Auburn's going to do a better job of protecting its quarterback because Georgia is still kind of running out their same game plan, or Georgia's going to get a little bit more exotic and have some success and probably, limit Auburn's attack from extending drives. Both teams aren't great at defending the pass this season. They both kind of been abysmal in that area. I think that's going to be who wins this game is, can one of these two quarterbacks throw for 230, 240 yards in this football game? Because, both teams stop the run. They're about the same as far as stopping the run. And Georgia's probably going to still get theirs in that area. So I think it's just going to come down to, I think, offensive tackle play for both teams. If Georgia's offensive tackles can handle Kieran Crawford and Kedrick Falk, then Georgia's going to do well. And at the same time, if they actually can get to Jackson Arnold and force him to make bad choices or make errant throws, then all those great playmakers are still going to just be standing there, not getting the ball anywhere near them. And so I think that's kind of the key to this game. And also just need to point out that I do think they're going to face one of the better running backs of the year. And Jeremiah Cobb's been really good as well. So I think it's an interesting strength on strength, weakness on weakness battle. But I just think the offensive tackles for both teams are going to be what really dictates how this game goes.
I'm right there with you. I mean, Auburn allowed 9 sacks in that game against Oklahoma, and it was a game where, not all of those were on the offensive line. Jackson Arnold has a propensity to hold on to the ball too long. Kirby was asked about that on Monday. Didn't like the question, which, go figure. But, it's evident that Jackson has to get the ball out quicker. And, yeah, the offensive tackle, I don't know if you guys saw this, that Hugh Freeze on Monday was saying that Xavier Chaplin, the left tackle, is having hearing issues. So that was a good thing to figure out, 6 weeks into the season. So that's always good. Maybe they can get that figured out. But, no, I'm with you that offensive line play, if you could tell me who plays better on the offensive line, I think I'd have a pretty good sense of who wins this game. Ben, what do you make of Jackson Arnold to this point at Auburn, and especially with the weapons around him, what he could do to this Georgia defense?
Well, that's the thing. It's like, are we judging Jackson Arnold based on what we've seen or the potential of what the best version of it bottled up could be? Because I know when Kirby Smart's preparing to play him, he's thinking about how he can take advantage of you, right? Like he talks about the 60-yard runs that he's capable of ripping off. It's clear that message has gotten through, because I know that Justin Williams was just talking this week about how fast Jackson Arnold is and how much you notice that when it pops up on film. I mean, you look at the receivers that they've gotten, we've talked about them for a while, and nobody's ever seemed to be able to take advantage, or he hasn't been able to seem to take advantage of them yet. But I hate to say this, it's felt like every team this season has figured out how to get their wide receivers involved once they've played Georgia, or get someone involved in the passing game once they've played Georgia. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but Tennessee has one of the best offenses in college football right now, so it's not that shocking what they were able to do to Georgia, but they were able to get some explosives in the passing game. Alabama was able to get some explosives in the passing game. Even Kentucky was able to get some explosives in the passing game. And the problem with those are all it takes is one. All it takes is one busted coverage. All it takes is one Cam Coleman making some miraculous play down the field. And all of a sudden, it doesn't matter that they don't do it that frequently. They did it that one time, and now you're down 7. And so it's like, I think that's what's interesting to me about Jackson Arnold and this Auburn team is, like, I don't think that they're consistent enough to be able to beat that many teams in the SEC right now. But on any given half, like on any given possession, do I think that they can exploit you and then all of a sudden you're finding yourself fighting for your life? Like, yeah, I do think that they have that ability in them. And that's what I think is so fascinating, really, about this game, but really the next 3 games for Georgia is just they can all get you in their own weird little ways, and you should win. But I think we're going to learn a lot about Georgia each of these next 3 weeks and how they're able to handle certain types of matchups.
Yeah, I like the way you use the word potential because I used that for the story I wrote on Monday. And I asked Kirby, and I had to kind of figure out how do you ask, like, yeah, this offense hasn't played that well, but they have the potential to be really good. And I thought Kirby gave me a decent answer because, like you said, all it takes is a couple plays of it working for it to become a problem. And again, the secondary has been pushed at times and has made mistakes and given guys opportunities. And yeah, I wanted to play this clip of Dalen Everett because he talked about the 2 guys that I think, in that passing game are the guys you got to watch, in Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton. That's what Dalen had to say about both of them.
Yeah, they're 2 really good receivers. Cam, he has a size. He's one of those guys you could just really just throw it up to him. Like he's like the 50-50 type of guy. So we just got to do a good job of making plays on the ball when that opportunity comes. And then Singleton, we played him last year. He was at Georgia Tech. He's also a really good receiver, real shifty. You can really put him anywhere. So we just got to stay locked in and yeah.
Like Ben said, I mean, those guys can burn you if you make a mistake. And, the thing that I keep thinking about in my head, I think that was during Georgia's bye week when Auburn played Oklahoma. Just the picture of Cam Coleman running wide open and, Jackson Arnold not being able to hit him. But, if he makes the play, that we could be talking about a different trajectory for this Auburn team and especially, a different play there. But, I mean, Kipp, how much do you think Georgia fans should be concerned with this Auburn receiving core, with Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton, just what they could do against a secondary that has looked shaky at times?
It depends on if you want to take the Kirby Smart approach and worry about the worst case scenario happening, or if you want to just think about the fact that Georgia did give up more yards than Kentucky in the passing game than they're used to, but they are putting younger players out there on the field and getting them more experience for the upside of them getting better as each week goes along. And I think that's where this Georgia defense is actually growing up on a week-to-week basis. And I think in this environment, in this game, sure, anything can happen. But at the same time, I think that Auburn's passing attack is not – it's only on paper so far. I don't think a Kirby Smart defense is going to be what allows everything to, to go worst case scenario, even in Jordan-Hare Stadium, even at night. I think there's still going to be, different mistakes that are made by Auburn that Georgia's, able to take advantage of. And I think that's what the film will show. That's what Auburn's play has shown. And that we all know that on paper only matters like in July, early August. Now it's just these guys aren't going out and the film is not backing up, all the preseason accolades, even what these guys did last season. I mean, Malcolm Simmons has 100 receiving yards right now. He's got less. I mean, London Humphreys has more than him so far. So I think at the end of the day, they don't have Horatio Fields out there. I mean, that was a guy that was, making some plays as well. 3 of their top 4 receivers are under 10 yards per catch. It's just you're going to have a Cam Coleman prayer that's, thrown up. And we know how prayers can, come to fruition in that stadium. But I do think as long as you're making sure that Eric Singleton maybe even is bracketed, because you've seen he's already done it in 2 games against Georgia. He's made plays against them. That's the focal point for the secondary, is making sure that guy doesn't get loose. As long as you don't have a coverage breakdown like you had on that one play against Kentucky, I think you're going to be fine. You're going to keep all these guys in front of you and allow your front to have enough time to get to Jackson Arnold.
Eric Singleton, the Georgia Tech transfer, so Georgia knows him very well. Ben, any other matchups or position battles that you want to pay attention to on Saturday when it comes to Georgia and Auburn? You got to unmute.
I think Kipp brought the 2 up earlier that I wanted to bring up the most. I mean, Auburn sneaky really good against the run this year, third nationally in EPA per rush for the analytics folks out there on Auburn on defense. Georgia's 7th in that category itself defensively too. So 2 of the better run defenses in college football going up against one another. I think that we've seen Georgia consistently run the football against everyone, so it very much is a good on good in this one. I think that this week and then against Florida in 2 weeks, you're going to learn, or 3 weeks, I guess, 2 games, you're going to learn a lot about whether this Georgia offense is going to be able to run the ball on everyone. If Georgia runs the ball for 200 against Auburn and 200 against Florida, Georgia's going to be able to run the ball for 200 on just about everybody that it plays this season, because I don't think you're going to face 2 defensive fronts better stopping the run than them. And so it's an interesting matchup. And then like Kipp brought up, Georgia hasn't been able to rush the passer. Auburn hasn't been able to either protect, or Jackson Arnold has been holding too long, or whatever that may be. Something's got to give there. I don't know why I weirdly favor Auburn on that front in terms of like something's got to give. I just don't see this Georgia defensive front. Like, I think this Georgia defense is who it is, and we all who have watched them this season know who it is, and they just have to find a way to scheme around that and make enough plays to be able to live with that, because I just don't see, no matter who it is, this Georgia team coming away with a game where it just wreaked havoc all game long in the defensive back or in the backfield.
No, I think it's fair, and I think that they're going to have to just keep blitzing inside linebackers, keep unleashing Chris Cole, because I'm with Ben. I think this defensive line is what it is at this point. And the other thing I'll point out, just for fans to keep an eye out on Saturday night, see if Auburn goes back to the run game at all. It was a huge part of their win over Baylor in week 1, and for whatever reason against Oklahoma, didn't run very much. Hugh Freeze went in the postgame, was basically like, yeah, we got to do a better job, running the football. And then I think they ran him for even less, took less carries with the running backs against Texas A&M. So they've had a week to try to retool and try to clean that up. Let's see if they're able to. Ben talked about Georgia being able to run the ball. The guy that has gotten so much attention here in the last, I guess, really month at this point has been Chauncey Bowens. Redshirt freshman, had a fantastic game against Alabama, played well against Kentucky. Just wanted to play this clip to age us a little bit. He was talking to us on Monday, was asked about the NFL guys he looked up to when he was a kid, the guys that kind of inspired him with how he runs the ball. I'm sorry to delay this, but let's just jump into it and feel bad about ourselves.
Well, good question. I'll say growing up, I watched a lot of Saquon, Nick Chubb, Sony for sure. Being a Florida guy as well. That's been a guy that I kind of watched and took some things from and try to add into my game.
Okay, obviously Sony and Nick weren't that long ago, but I want to shout out Dog Nation's Connor Riley, who pointed out that by saying those guys, that meant that Chauncey was too young to have watched Todd Gurley. Kipp, I don't want to set you off into a panic, but any thoughts on what Chauncey had to share there?
I mean, that's brutal. We have a gap. Like, I would say Garrison Hurst. You guys would probably say like maybe Musa Smith, no Sean, if that. Like, we're getting into multiple generations. Like, if it's like whenever we saw the Duke #1 overall player was doing the Topps player cards for the year he was born, basketball players, and he didn't know like any of the guys. He didn't know any of the players. Like, if you give him if you give Chauncey Bowens like a 2003 pack of cards, is he going to know any of these players? And I think we already see the answer right there. Like, Thomas Brown, he'd just be like, I'm not sure who that is. So it's very, very humbling, and I hate it. But you know what? That's how generations work. And the fact that we're probably a couple years away from guys not knowing who AJ Green is, that's where we're getting. Or we may already be there. We're probably on the cusp. And there's definitely some recruits that's been calling that it's like Georgia's not going to be able to sell AJ Green at Georgia to them because they're not going to know who he is. So That is definitely how time works, and I think this is where it sneaks up on us all because that was really hard for me to listen to.
Yeah, I that made me hurt. And Kip, let that be a reminder to go take your vitamins. Ben, what did you make of what young Mr. Bowens shared there?
Well, I think I told you the story recently of the Lakeland defensive lineman Santana Harvey in the 2027 class. He's from Lakeland, Florida. Grew up a Georgia fan. I was like, "Why'd you grow up a Georgia fan?" He was like, "Well, when I was a kid, I just loved Nolan Smith from the moment that he got to Georgia." And I'm just like, when Nolan Smith is like the kid, like you're the kid, and Nolan Smith's like he's been in the league for like what? This is a third year in the league right now. And I'm talking to guys. I was just like, man, goodness gracious. So yeah, we've reached that point. It's why I bring up, if your program hasn't won a SEC championship game in like 17 years, like you have completely missed the only demographic that matters in terms of rebuilding your football program. So yeah, there's a lot of teams that when they hear stuff like that, it should be even more of a wake-up call how distant you are from being a relevant football program in college football.
Just a hypothetical pool there, right, with 2008.
Yeah, 17 years was a completely random poll.
Well, on that note, we will get ready to end this episode. I appreciate Kip and Ben for working with my schedule and recording a little bit later today. Thanks everyone who watched this live, everyone who is watching or listening after the fact. Please go to dogs247.com. A lot of great content. We are getting ready for the big rivalry game, another edition of the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Basketball's not that far away. I think next week is SEC Basketball Media Day in Birmingham, and I'll plan on being out there to hear from Mike White and company, getting ready for the start of their season. We'll have baseball not that far from now. Olivia Sayer, who's doing a great job helping us with football, she'll have the baseball coverage for us. A lot of great content. We hope you will join us there. Subscribe to the Junkyard Dawgcast wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate and review. That helps us tremendously. Subscribe to our YouTube, Dogs247, and also our TikTok. Hoping to put some more content there pretty soon. So we'll wrap it up right there. For Kipp Adams and Ben Wolk, I'm Jordan Hill. Until next time, take care, everybody.